Richard Rawlings reveals shocking information at the age of 55. The world is in disbelief at the sudden demise of the name that once dominated reality television with the boisterous Richard Rawlings. No longer does the man called the grease-slinging cowboy stand in his garage with that flaming look or flash, that daring grin for the cameras. On the contrary, he has made a shocking announcement. Real Reason Discovery Channel brutally cancelled his legendary show, the unfiltered facts about his broken marriages, and a car collection auctioned off under Knight's name. The glittering existence was all an act. Underneath it all is a complex network of cracks, legal phone calls, and a $6 million lawsuit that might have altered the course of events. Richard Rawlings was once supreme on the asphalt, but what caused him to lose it all as his popularity spiraled out of control? Every piece of information feels like a predetermined drift around a razor-sharp curve in this stifling high-octane study, which is more than just the story of a motor enthusiast. Now, the future of Gas Monkey Garage has been unveiled in ways that no fan could have imagined. Texas was Richard Rawlings' home state, and growing up there was like stepping into a bare-knuckle combat every day. His life is not a fairy tale, but rather an unfiltered tale of perseverance and dogged pursuit. Gas Monkey Garage, an industry powerhouse, was born out of Rawlings' humble beginnings on the mean streets. It wasn't an easy win, though. To get there, he had to wade through a swamp of failures, lost opportunities, and dubious alliances. Despite his humble beginnings, Rawlings managed to make something of his meager resources that garnered global attention. Richard Rawlings made the unprecedented decision to face the rumors that had followed him for years at the age of 55, when his career was on the rise and his name was trending on television and social media. He finally came clean about the secret lawsuits, broken relationships, and mysteries behind the rise of his Gas Monkey enterprise that had been causing a stir around the globe. Rawlings did not offer any justifications in his live broadcast address. His long veers off course, the sleep-stealing mistakes, and the painful lessons he had to learn were all gently and painstakingly discussed. The stage lights went out, but the audience didn't feel any better. New inquiries, on the other hand, persisted. Had he been really honest, or had he withheld details that were more manageable? Richard Rawlings declined to provide an apology. All he did was lay out his truth, or the version of it he wished the world would accept. Even though a legal storm has been simmering behind the scenes, the neon sign of Gas Monkey Barn Grill continues to cut through the darkness as night settles over Dallas. The bar with the rebellious monkey emblem sued Richard Rawlings, the man responsible for making Gas Monkey a worldwide phenomenon, for an astounding $6 million, according to court records. False financial claims, internal sabotage, defamation, violation of contract, and 47 pages of charges make it read like a noir thriller. The revelations are so disturbing they might terrify anyone. Rumors circulating amongst employees portray Richard as an obnoxious 13-year-old with limitless resources. During a contentious boardroom confrontation, he fearlessly asserted that he had been denied access to the bar's financial records for quite some time, claiming he could not examine statements or monitor cash flow. Richard went oddly quiet when the lawyers and police asked him to check the system's records against those allegations. The room was filled with a thick, suffocating silence. There was no response, no demand to view the books as a peace offering. As if hiding something important, he avoided looking at anyone who may pry into his thoughts. Considering his previous resistance, his subsequent quiet has only served to heighten suspicions over his involvement in the situation. Is there a secret being kept? There has been a complete and utter lack of transparency from both sides. Does this silence indicate a strategic move or the beginning of a darker, more sinister conflict? When Richard retaliated in 2019, the narrative intensified. Following the expiration of their contract, he counter-sued the bar for $1 million, accusing them of trademark infringement for continuing to use the Gas Monkey brand in promotions and events. He went even farther, saying the bar had associated the brand with things that brought disgrace to his name and the legacy he had worked so hard to establish. However, how exactly was that reputation tarnished? By the way, who is actually profiting from the Gas Monkey moniker? The scope of this feud swiftly expanded beyond a petty commercial dispute. A Gas Monkey empire seems to be crumbling from the inside out, what with all the leaked emails, cryptic podcast comments, intense stares, and secret meetings. What changed it from Richard's creation and a symbol he carried across the world into his enemy? Do these two parties just have different priorities, or does one side betray the other in a more profound way that they are afraid to discuss? In the midst of this legal dispute, Richard took yet another action that caused controversy. He parted ways with his illustrious collection of cars. They were more than just cars, they were aspirations come true. A man's vitality who had spent his entire life devoted to automobiles. Many people wanted to know if he was sucking the lifeblood out of his enthusiasm because of the $6 million lawsuit, or if this was all an elaborate ploy. The response was immediate. Nothing made Richard back down. He squandered the money on flashy, powerful, and ostentatious vehicles like Ferraris and Lamborghinis. Even if Gas Monkey Bar and Grill fails and the legal fights stretch on, Richard's inner fire will continue to burn brightly, as he declared with a resounding voice. Is the emergence of these supercars the phoenix's tail, or only a shiny bandage covering a deeper wound? Who knows what the verdict will be in this case? Just quiet, with no announcements or settlements made public, as though the parties involved had mutually decided to erase this dismal chapter from history. What stays, though, is the expression on Richard's face every time the subject of Gas Monkey Bar and Grill arises. A subtle, unspoken resentment has taken the place of the brilliant brilliance of his heyday. Has Richard actually forgotten about the past? On the other hand, is he still haunted by the memory of a gas monkey who was once his lifeline by the sound of those supercar engines? This story takes an unexpected turn in 2020, when Richard Rawlings shocked fans by shockingly deciding to leave Discovery, the network that had propelled him to stardom, while Fast and Loud was still a ratings juggernaut. What could possibly motivate him to step away from the limelight when he is at the pinnacle of his career and has millions of devoted fans? Richard described his Discovery contract as a restraint that limited his enthusiasm and creativity, and he expressed a desire for more independence in interviews. He stated in a calm voice that going Fast and Loud worked, although his eyes showed signs of fatigue. That makes sense for Richard, a man whose imagination is constantly pushing him forward. Is it really that easy, though? Departing from Discovery was a risky move. Quick and Loud wasn't merely a television program. It was the driving force behind his Gas Monkey Garage empire's meteoric rise to international prominence. Leaving meant more than just losing the spotlight. It was stepping away from a firm base. Richard, who survived being shot in 1990 and sold all he owned as a young man, had always been daring. However, this time, the mystery of his pursuit persisted. Already in 2018, a $6 million lawsuit had shaken his world, involving Gas Monkey Bar and Grill. He responded to the defamation accusations with a countersuit worth $1 million. Would he have been more driven to take full control after the wounds from that legal dispute, or was he just tired of caving in to the network's demands and ready to escape the corporate grind? Fast and Loud and Discovery both let his departure shine through. Richard, the man who never sits still, is a spirit full of restlessness. He made a bold statement that his love was still burning, but on a different level, by investing heavily in elegant Ferraris and Lamborghinis, doubling down on his passion. But as those supercars sped along, I wondered if he had really escaped the past. Or does he still feel the weight of his past mistakes and the pain they caused, like a shadow he can't seem to escape? Richard Rawlings famously said, "Cars never lie," as he stood in his grease-stained workshop with the reverberating clang of wrenches and the illuminating glare of TV lights. A more convoluted trail than any vehicle that has ever passed through Gas Monkey Garage, however, emerges from the private life of the brash and speedy thinker. Emotions were occasionally included with receipts, contracts, and signatures in that world's marriages. His 1993 marriage to Karen Grams was short-lived. I have almost no recollection of the woman, and there are no children or joint property. Similar to the pre-production parts of a vehicle. There was no drama, no rupture, and no trace of that relationship in the records. It just faded away. Richard did not begin a more substantial trip until he wed Suzanne Mergeley in 1999. They were together for 10 years, during which time he went on several filming sessions, lengthy business trips across the country, and many lonely nights spent in solitude. Divorce followed, but in 2015 he returned to Suzanne in the hopes of restoring what they had lost, just like a gearhead who refuses to give up on a classic car. He had a knack for bringing rusty artifacts back to life at his shop. No amount of new paint or oil can restore the humming sound once the soles dry out. They reunited for 4 years before breaking up permanently in 2019. A Mercedes-Benz ESL, $300,000, and a slew of nice comments was Suzanne's take-home pay. There was no mess, no drama, just a neat, subtle handoff that left the air colder than a darkened garage. In the same year, Richard conducted a stunt that caught everyone off guard. Darwin Deason, a tech tycoon who sold his company to Xerox for more than $6 billion, was his ex-wife, Katerina Deason, and he announced their engagement. Their romance caused a lot of people to speculate a lot. A woman immersed in the upper class and a man who deals in classic cars. No ordinary love story could ever be made with it. Their 2020 nuptials, however, remained privately announced. There are no jubilant spectators, no clamoring tabloids, and no flashing cameras, just Richard forging forth on an uncharted course. When he thinks back on the twists and turns of his romantic life, it's not the endings that stand out, but rather his unwavering focus on the road ahead, even when conditions got dicey. Richard Rawlings was a master game-changer in the face of multi-million-dollar rides, rich television partnerships, and an infamous reputation. What really shows how much his independence cost, though, are the sums in those divorce settlements, not his speed on the open roadway. The rock-solid foundation of a family may be the one thing he has never been able to achieve. Richard Rawlings was once the epitome of charisma and success in the limelight, but a lesser-known story is playing out behind the scenes. From the highs and lows of his personal relationships to seismic lawsuits and the selling of prize cars, his life and career have been uncovered, revealing hitherto hidden aspects. But one unchangeable fact remains in the midst of it all. The most difficult item to cling to in a fast-paced, famous environment is probably not an automobile, but yourself. His resiliency begs the question. Rawlings was not hiding behind the perfect facade. Despite the scrutiny he endured, he never surrendered to the will of the people. Carrying his scars as evidence of a life fiercely lived, he chose to press on. Instead of pursuing transient recognition, he took responsibility of his mistakes, learned from them, and got back up after each fall.